Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Welcome to CityTalk. We're taping at CUNY TV studios nearly 2 weeks after the terrorist attack in New York City. What is the effect of this catastrophe on the City University of New York, and what can CUNY do in the physical and psychic reconstruction of the city? With us today is Chancellor Matthew Goldstein and Executive Vice Chancellor Louise Mira. Welcome to CUNY TV.
Good to see you, Doug.
Mr. Chancellor, you were down at Borough of Manhattan Community College. Can you just tell us what you saw, what you felt on the ground at that time?
I got there about 9:30 in the morning.
Immediately after?
9:30 in the morning, no, on Wednesday, the
on
following
Wednesday,
day.
right.
The following day. It was eerie, it was surreal, it was deeply, deeply emotionally moving to see people just wandering in the streets in plumes of dust, aimlessly walking and not being aware truly of what had happened. Of course, the devastation was so profound and so emotionally upsetting. It was as if you were in an environment that was totally foreign to you. For me, I could have been placed on a planet different than Earth, and that was the kind of feeling that I had, this eeriness, this sense of something different now is the case in this city and in this country. It was a defining moment.
What were your first thoughts on the scene? Can you remember?
The entire facades of buildings and the ground were covered in this smoke and ash. Everything was white, and there was a stillness and a quietness, although it was packed with people, emergency medical workers, the police, the fire department, but there was a quietness. It was as if people were just in a space together, but not really interacting. They were just going about their business quietly and stunned by the events of the day before.
Your first thoughts of CUNY, I understand sort of the personal, visceral reaction, but as Chancellor, what was your first thoughts about CUNY?
Borough of Manhattan Community College is at 199 Chambers Street. It's just a short walk to Ground Zero. And my concern, of course, in addition to the bigger concern of the effect on the city and especially the loss of lives, which were going to be very obvious at that point, of what was going to be the case with Borough of Manhattan Community College. Would this college be able to open? What was its physical condition? Contiguous to the building is a building that was donated a few years ago by the Fitterman family on West Broadway. And that is a very large building that housed the CUNY Research Foundation. It housed hundreds of classes. It housed an accelerator that we were very proud to have worked with the New York City Investment Fund. Wanted to make sure that all of that was secure.
What happens to BMCC now? Can you tell us what the status is? I know it's being used as a rescue and command center now. What's going to happen? Do we have any idea?
We closed BMCC down immediately. It is the only campus that has remained closed. All of the other campuses of City University remained open, and I thought that was an important symbolic step in addition to being a safe harbor for all of the people that work there. BMCC is closed for all operations. We are working diligently, forcefully, I think, with a lot of determination to get that building open fully for classes on October 1st. And we're
How realistic is it?
I think that we're going to make it. I think we will get there. We have obviously other contingency plans. If we won't be able to use that building fully, we will not be able to use Fitterman Hall, which is a very large facility. And we have a plan that is in place. We work very effectively with Antonio Perez, who is the president of Borough Manhattan Community College, and Executive Vice Chancellor Louise Mira has really taken the lead of working with that campus to reschedule and reformat what it is we do.
Let me turn to you then. What's going to happen to those students between now and October 1st? And if we can't meet that deadline of October 1st, where do these students go?
Well, for the time being, the students are all being counseled that the expectation of the university is that BMCC will reopen on October 1st. Naturally, the students are very concerned. Our students are very motivated. They want to get on with their education, and we're trying to help them as much as we possibly can. We are making the entire university open to these students, so if they decide they need to resume their studies more immediately, we are making arrangements for them to continue their studies on permit at another of our campuses.
Let's talk about something that I know you've been very actively involved in, and that is the construction of this helpline. Can you explain that to us?
Well, one of the first things that we thought about was how we could help primarily our students, and knowing that CUNY has a wealth of faculty with tremendous expertise in relevant areas, psychology, social work, nursing, and so on and so forth, the Chancellor asked me to see whether we could seek assistance from our faculty and set up a helpline that would be open, in our first thinking, to our students. As it turned out, there were many constituencies around the city who needed the same sort of help. What we provided with, at this point, there have been about 40 faculty and staff members at the university who have donated their time. And what we're providing is essentially an ear, a trained ear, responses to questions, counseling about where to get further help, and there have been some cases of truly
And this is available not only to CUNY students, but to affected people irrespective of where they came from.
We
or where
made the
they
decision very soon after we set up the helpline. We made the decision to open it to anyone around the city who wished. There were many people in the business community who had no service available to them, and we offered this to the New York City Partnership and transmitted the number to them.
What's the number?
The number is 212-794-5588.
And we urged all members of the New York community to avail themselves of this resource. Another thing that happened, and that's sort of at the state level, because things are happening all over, is that the governor announced a program of free tuition to families of victims and emergency workers. How's this going to work, and what's our role in it?
Monday night, I got a call from the governor's people to see if I could be available for a press conference on Tuesday. I chaired that press conference where the governor announced a program for all spouses and children of people who perished during this attack and also were fully disabled. So we are bringing this resolution to our Board of Trustees. It will be brought to the SUNY Board of Trustees the following day. We're doing it on the 24th. They're doing it on the 25th. Not only will this be for tuition payments, but fees and books and other services that we could provide.
Okay. In addition to this, what's being done in the larger issue of CUNY-connected victims, students, faculty, staff, alumni, friends, etc.? What's going on?
Each of our campuses have done exemplary work right from the very first day of this attack at the World Trade Center. Numerous programs have been instituted at our campuses dealing with issues of bereavement, counseling, as Dr. Mira has talked about. But in addition, town meetings, discussions in classes. I mean, this is what a university is best prepared to do, to engage people, to get them to really talk and guide some of that discussions about the full implications of what we saw
And
here.
we want to talk about that particularly in greater length in the second segment of the program. Another thing that the CUNY community is interested in is the status of the Research Foundation. Both the physical status, what's going on, how faculty and others interact with it.
The CUNY Research Foundation is a big organization. It processes about $200 million a year in transactions. It has about 3,200 project employees. Within a day, we found new space at 57th Street, where we have a number of other facilities. They are moving in as we are taping. So the Research Foundation is going to be fully operational. All of their data were backed up, so we didn't lose any of the transaction information, and I think they're going to be fine.
What other changes in the immediate sort of programmatic sense has CUNY been involved in reaction to this aftermath, in addition to what we've just discussed?
We have a lot of faculty whose research is around areas that are totally relevant to the crisis of last week. CUNY has a new center right here at the Graduate School, Center for Middle East and Middle Eastern American Studies, with a large number of faculty participants whose areas of expertise are, in this realm, and each of them is working to involve themselves in conferences and so on and so forth that will help to educate.
In terms of the larger
community.
contribution of the university to the city, which we'll talk at again in the second portion of the show, any words to the students as they go to class in terms of what they should expect from CUNY?
I think our students, our faculty, and our staff need to know we have to move forward. We cannot permit these terrorists to stop us in our tracks doing the things that we do well day to day at this great university. This is about learning, it's about imparting information, it's about creating new research, and this is what the university has to continue to do. Within the context of that basic core set of values that we have to understand that the world has changed in a very dramatic way in a matter of minutes, and that the university, as it is part of this city and this community, has to change along the way. And we could talk about a few of the ways in which the university is going to change, but it will have to change. It's not going to be the same place that it was before.
Okay, let's stop here, but let's pick up on it right after this important message. Thank you.
You don't have to like me.
Or you can. You don't have to be my friend.
But you might like me if you got to know me.
You don't have to be my roommate.
I am gonna be your neighbor. You don't have to run with me.
You really don't have to run away from me.
You may not like what I have to say.
But hear me.
Hear me out.
Man, we're not all that different. I like good food.
Good music.
I love my mom. Yeah, I want to fall in love.
Madly.
I want a good job.
I want my kids to live in a world
Where they are safe and loved.
And respected for who they are.
You don't have to like me.
But if you talk to me,
You might.
We can end prejudice if we talk to each other.
call.
Tell us what you do.
Together we can build one America.
Welcome back to City Talk. I'm with Chancellor Matt Goldstein and Vice Chancellor Louise Mura. Thank you for being here. Chancellor, you were talking before the break about the changes that the university needed to go through, both in response to this crisis, if you will, but needed to undergo in any event anyway. Can you talk about some of this?
Yeah, I think as this city has changed, so has the university changed. We are much more of a city of immigrants, and we're much more a university of immigrants, and I think that's to our great advantage. We are about to go into battle in this country. President Bush has made this very clear that we are going to take military action, and it's quite possible, and probably there is high likelihood, that the countries that will be involved in some military operation will be those that our students come from. And we have to be very sensitive to the fact that we have large numbers of students in this university from the Middle East in particular that are going to be affected by this, and we must be very sensitive to their concerns, their fears, their anxieties, and not to create an environment or help to create an environment where there's going to be tension between those students and others. And that's something I'm deeply concerned about, and I know our faculty are deeply concerned about. And as we move through this process, I think we have to be on high alert to be very, very sensitive to the psychological effects that many of these students may have as this thing unfolds over the next weeks and months.
But by the same token, this tremendous diversity allows the university, through its students, to communicate to the larger community about what we are as a community within the university and talk about the various cultures and values out there that must be reconciled.
And that's absolutely correct. We know from the recent census that the city has changed, and it's changed in ways that have made this a more diverse institution, because our population basically reflects the city's population. So we have more of an opportunity than many other places would to open a conversation, to open dialogues. And you know, as I said earlier, we also have faculty with expertise to lead those dialogues. And there are certainly there's a planned teach-in just next week at the university, which intends to bring together faculty and students to do just that.
Let me interrupt you. Teach-ins, resonant word for somebody who came out of the 60s and 70s. What are we teaching? What are we learning? What do we expect to come out of this dialogue that you're suggesting?
Well, I think, you know, there's the psychological dimension, and I think we will, you know, certainly continue. Dean Rosa Gill, who's a social worker, will continue with the helpline. So we'll continue on that track. But I think right now what our students want to know, need to learn about, are really the roots of this crisis. Why? And so I think just as the teach-ins of the 60s and early 70s intended to do, these teach-ins also will intend to show where did we come from, why are people thinking the way they're thinking, and acting the way they're acting.
And in fact, what's in our future, this budding debate between freedom versus order and security, really gets to fundamental values that a university is uniquely qualified to address.
And I want to say also, you know, some very practical issues. We have a lot of engineers around this university who are very deeply involved in urban systems, transportation systems, building structures. We have a school of architecture. Some of the questions and some of the debate will be over building safe buildings and how to rebuild New York in the context of the tragedy.
And you've got schools of public affairs and departments of public administration and departments of business and schools of business, Baruch, which can provide direct assistance, insight, etc., and a fora for discussion.
And of course, CUNY has a very long and distinguished track record of responding to needs, occupational needs, and changes in the economy of New York City, and preparing people, preparing the workforce. So a lot of our thinking and a lot of our faculty's thinking will be around where the economy is headed in New York and how to respond to it.
Chancellor, have you had discussions with, I know it's early, with business leaders, other university leaders about how this dialogue and how this interaction and assistance can take place?
Hourly, since this occurred, I've had extensive conversations with business leaders in the city, certainly our presidents, many faculty. I think you brought up a very good point before, that one of the things that the university can take some leadership role in is that the way in which we conduct our lives are going to have to change in this country. If we want a secure city, if we want a secure country, there are certain civil liberties that we have taken for granted for a very long time, almost been some being cavalier about this. And I think the university can serve as a wonderful springboard for talking about those balances and those tensions and how they pull at each other. And I would expect our faculties, our counselors, as our university gets back to a more normal set of operations will be embedding these kinds of discussions throughout the curriculum and outside the curriculum as well.
Any communication with other university and college leaders? I'm stuck on this teach and learn-in situation. Or do you know of any other institutions that are thinking along similar grounds that we can have conversations with each other as well as the larger community?
We've had some very serious discussions with Jay Oliva, who's the president of New York University, Bob Carey, the president of the New School, David Caputo, the president of PACE. In fact, all of us penned our names to a letter that we sent talking about how the university ought to be, the set of universities in the city, ought to be called upon to do some of the things that we're discussing with you today. So yes, it's not just City University thinking about this. I think others are doing it as well. People look to the City University because of our size, of our real social commitment to all that study at our institutions, our connection to the business community, our very close connection to our legislative leaders, both at the city and the state. So there's a long tradition at the City University of New York of taking a leadership role, and I think other institutions, as they battle with how best to position themselves to maximize the potential of the university, look to this university for some guidance. So there is that.
To a certain extent, what I'm hearing is that this tragedy has almost forced the university, even though it did it before, into even a greater involvement in the community and the lives of the inhabitants of the city, even though extensive, as you indicated, being the most diverse, certainly the largest and most diverse public university in the world, that this tragedy is forcing us out there to look outward more and less inwardly. Do you see, is that something that will become, is it real, number one, and is it permanent, number two?
It is, and I would defer to Dr. Mira on this, but we have been positing a view of the integrated university. It's been a theme of ours for the past 2 years, and Dr. Mira has really taken this notion of breaking the boundaries that separate the university from wider communities and done very exemplary work in trying to do just that.
Where are we and where should we go?
I think we're most of the way towards being an integrated university, a truly integrated university, and naturally we're much richer as one university. I think that the response that we have had to this crisis really has depended on all of our faculty and all of our students seeing themselves as one CUNY. We had experts from across all of our 20 campuses participate in the helpline. I think that if we'd had to rely on one college alone, we would not have had the richness, the wealth of response that we had. I think in terms of our students have come together. You know, we have a new honors college, which is part of the integrated university and certainly an important symbol of it. Those students have been working collaboratively. They have a listserv, they have a chat room, essentially a chat room. They've had the chance to talk through with each other across campuses and across geographical boundaries in the city about these issues.
Even in an embryonic form, new initiatives, new avenues of contact, new avenues of involvement? I know it's early.
Absolutely. John Jay College has a plan jointly sponsored with FEMA conference in January to talk about urban protection. FEMA is using John Jay's library as an important archive. I think there are certainly many coalitions that have been built between the university and external communities. We've, in planning for various scenarios with BMCC, we've relied on our relationship, the Chancellor's relationship in particular with the Chancellor of the Board of Education. I think that the infrastructure was in place and we're now able to exploit it.
Okay. Anything to add?
It's good to see you, and we look forward to...
I'm not finished with you yet.
Oh, all right.
But I just want to know if you had to add to that. Where do you want to go?
I want this university to be as important into the lives of our students that we have today and future students as we possibly can be. This world is changing in a very, very dramatic way, not just because of the set of incidences that we are concerned about today, but the world of creation of knowledge has changed very dramatically. When the three of us were in school, we were very comfortable in our little disciplines and didn't really pay too much attention to what was happening next door into some other disciplines. The notion of the integrated university is also about the integration of disciplines, and that the important questions and the subtle questions and the difficult questions really are on the boundaries of disciplines that have been created in a university.
So we have to think about,
and we're just approaching this body of knowledge in a very different way.
so we're talking about rethinking the very structure, if not the concept of the university. I mean, we're talking about groundbreaking historical potential changes.
I would say yes. I would say yes.
The history is short. Our time frames now are short, but we're looking long. We're dealing with immediate tragedies, but we've got long-term goals. I want you folks back. I want you to give us a progress report in the next month or so.
Be happy to come back.
Thank you.
Good
It was
to see
a pleasure.
you. Always
Thank
good to see you, Doug.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.